Hello and welcome to Is This England, a show where we talk about old England games and ask just how England was this.
We're back in the forbidden forest of the Steve McClaren era. England have appointed their man and we continue on the road to Euro 2008 qualification.
Time can do.
So they got there in the end. The
Yeah.
FA, for all of their diligence and hard work, they've appointed Steve McClaren as the England manager.
They have. It was a long process for you, and it was a long process for us, as Brian Barwick said. It's just like so sick. Look, we've suffered as well. We had to sit through Allardyce's 1900 slides on PowerPoint. I didn't want to see any of those. He'd done flash art. He got the little clip to help him. Everything. He had to sit through all that, and then he demanded that he be taken for like a big roast at the end of it.
If he did it now, he'd do it in the metaverse, wouldn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Allardyce would be so into he's such a Facebook dad as well, isn't he?
True.
His Facebook picture would be like him, the guys that like take the pictures of them in their car with sunglasses on.
Yeah,
Just one of those like avatars. That'd so be him, wouldn't it?
definitely.
Hawaiian shirt on.
You kind of mentioned suffering there, and that's why we've approached this episode in a Odyssey format. We don't want to watch that many Steve McClaren games, so we're getting it all done in 1, 2, or 3 parts, or whatever it may be. The point we left off at was pretty much his appointment and bringing Sir Terence Venables on board as assistant. So, once you've got your feet under the desk, I think pretty common knowledge. Pretty common knowledge is he's basically done the equivalent of going to prison and punching the hardest bloke in there, hasn't he? Because what's his first action as England manager?
It is to shit on the legacy of David Beckham. That's what it is to
do. Wow, this is a new era. How did it? What happened then? What's happening here? Not surely Steve McClaren can't be shitting on Beckham's legacy.
Well, you make up your mind from this, basically. So, yeah, he went in and his first duty was basically to deal with the David Beckham situation. So Beckham had given up the captaincy after World Cup 2006 and decided it wouldn't be his anymore. And you kind of felt it from watching the Portugal game because he goes off injured in that game and he's crying like almost immediately that he knows if England don't get through, he's not going to play in the rest of the tournament. And maybe he'd already made up his mind about this is my last tournament as captain because someone else has got to come in and say something. Maybe he felt he was kind of wedded to Sven under that kind of regime. Yeah. And it's the right decision, really, because I don't think Beckham had been at such a low with England before, like even including all of the effigy and people hating him and whatever.
Because he was playing bad.
Yeah, his use in the team was just not good anymore. And he was getting picked on reputation. It just was like Sven started playing him in central midfield for a game. You remember the Northern Ireland qualifier? Yeah. And he played like the deepest of like 3 central midfielders, just like pinging the ball out. Like he was just trying to find somewhere for him to play.
Yeah, because for so many years when England were really shit, it would always be, well, just play so-and-so as a quarterback. It's that quarterback theory. The only good player we've got is really old, so have him just passing it from deep.
That's what they did with Gerrard as well, wasn't it? It was like, what we've got to do is just got to get Steven Gerrard on the ball. Famously, keeps his head and keeps the ball in tight situations. Nope, just smash it forward. Who can smash it forward the longest? That's who we play in that position. They've not really taken the quarterback idea on, have they? It's just long kicks.
As a young man who was sort of turned on to the world of football primarily via the prism of David Beckham, and a massive fan. Obviously, younger people can be fickle, and by this time, I really did want Beckham to step down from being captain to just be replaced by players with a bit of pace and what have you, and just a bit. There was no threat coming from that right-hand side, really, because everyone kind of knew what he was going to do and just double up and just make sure he can't get that cross off. And also as well, it probably is worth considering, even if he could get that cross off, we didn't have a stable front line to finish it.
Yeah, it was seen as England's golden generation, but it never quite stuck under Sven, did it? There was always just something missing, and like trying to play too many of the players on the pitch that probably shouldn't have been there, and that's kind of what McClaren has to deal with here as well. And we've just listed there all the reasons David Beckham shouldn't have been in the team and shouldn't have been England captain anymore. And McClaren agreed with us. He didn't even pick him anymore. So Beckham said that he would carry on playing for England as long as he was wanted. And
So
the first chance McClaren had, that was it. Yeah, he was just set down as captain. And McClaren was like, well, don't want you anywhere near the team, and didn't pick him in his first squad. Beckham said
that is just, again, it's the going to prison and punching the biggest bloke, isn't it? There's no real he wasn't bad enough to not be in the squad, and maybe it's that ego thing of, he doesn't want to sit on the bench, but I know people will have opinions on David Beckham. Even at this point, I just don't feel like he had that mentality about him, and I think he would have been happy to be part of the squad. And we'll see later how he reacts at club level to sort of being given the boot and how professional he is in terms of going about it. So Beckham kind of tried to control the narrative, didn't he? He had a little press conference to announce that England would no longer have a captain called David Beckham. Tears, all of that good stuff, all that really horrible good stuff that we kind of get used to in this era of sort of overly emotional England.
Yeah, and also at the same time as well, Beckham said he was shocked and hurt by receiving the call that he would not be in the England team anymore, and it kind of looked like the natural decline of one of England's great players, and it looked like we'd never see him play for England again either. I remember there was talk at the time of like, well, should he have like a last game to commemorate his career, and that does get said quite a lot. I think that happened to Wayne Rooney. I want to say he played against the USA when he clearly just wasn't good enough for playing for England anymore. But that doesn't really happen when we have these like final games for him. He doesn't get like a testimonial for England, does he?
No, it's always kind of there. I don't know who the player. It probably will be Harry Kane, who'll get one, and I just don't think they'll frame it as that. It's kind of unprofessional to frame it like that, I think.
Yeah.
But McLaren's come in, got rid of the captain. So before he looks to address the right side of the midfield issue, he's got to think about the captaincy issue. For me, really, there is only truly one contender for this title. It's not Steven Gerrard, it's not Wayne Rooney, it's not Frank Lampard. I think it did have to be John Terry.
Yeah, I don't really disagree at all. McClaren chose Chelsea's leader, captain, and dad, John Terry.
Dad of the year.
Dad of the year around this period as well. Daddy Sauce, Dad of the year. That's just stuck with me for years. I really don't know why.
I don't remember if they did it once or ever again, but good PR for Daddy Sauce. I mean,
it would not. I think maybe it would close because of said bad PR that would come from its association with John Terry. Fairness, John Terry, his stock had really risen under like the Abramovich era of Chelsea. He'd come in early. He was made captain there very early on. I think he took it off Desai, who World Cup winner and brilliant player. And he'd won his place in the England team in year 2004 in their best 11, and then retained it when Rio Ferdinand came back from his ban as well, and carried on playing with Ferdinand into the 2006 World Cup as well. It was Sol Campbell who kind of missed out and was seen as the player who just wasn't going to get involved anymore. Maybe it was, I think people would have had opinions, but I think the two best English centre-backs in the country were Ferdinand and Terry at that point. And Ferdinand was still probably going through his really awkward adjustment period at Man United. He hadn't quite clicked yet. There was a lot of talk about would he go to Chelsea because he hadn't signed his new Man United contract yet. He was playing in midfield at points as well. So
I don't remember any of that.
Yeah, it was a year where Man United just didn't have a midfield because I think Roy Keane left and Paul Scholes had like an eye operation or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think it was like Alan Smith was playing there, Ferdinand, Wayne Rooney played in midfield for a while as well. So it was a very strange time. But yeah, Terry's your man to bring England forward. And like we said, I think we kind of agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. The vice captaincy would be given to Steven Gerrard again, which I agree with.
Yeah.
But now he's got to name a squad. A squad for the first game of his regime, his era against Greece. We'll come on to the game shortly. The squad, I'm happy to kind of lead on just a top to bottom run through.
Who's who for McClaren?
Yeah. Goalkeepers, Paul Robinson, Chris Kirkland and YouTube's Ben Foster.
And Wrexham's Ben Foster.
YouTube and Wrexham's Ben Foster. Defenders, so I'll just kind of go through it without breaking down positions too much. Ashley Cole, Rio Ferdinand, John Terry, Wayne Bridge, Wes Brown, Jamie Carragher, Michael Dawson, Gary Neville, Phil Neville, Luke Young. Midfielders, Stuart Downing, Stephen Gerrard, Owen Hargreaves, Jermaine Genus, Frank Lampard, Aaron Lennon, Kieran Richardson, Sean Wright-Phillips, and Strike Force, I was going to say, the attackers, Peter Crouch, Jermaine Defoe, Dean Ashton, and Darren Bent. Is this Dean Ashton leg break? Because did he only ever get called up for one England squad and he got his flipping leg broken or something?
I don't know if it was one England squad. I think he got called up a few times, but I don't think he ever played for England from memory. I think it was just one of those unfortunate incidents with him where every time he got called up, he just got immediately injured. But he was a really good striker in his day. He was at Norwich around this time. I think he moved to West Ham and he was very good there too. But I think he just had a really bad ankle injury one year and it just stopped him.
It was his first call up for England. And he got his ankle broken in training. It was for this Greece game. Poor chap.
Yeah.
I mean, never really recovered from that. One of those, like you say, though, he was very highly rated as a striker. Some notable absences: Wayne Rooney and Michael Owen. Obviously, we've mentioned Beckham as another one. Rooney was injured and banned, just to be sure. And Michael Owen was injured. Yes, of course he was.
Obviously, this is that Michael Owen, you're injured forever period, isn't it? Just never the same player again.
Both of those are guaranteed starters, would you say?
I think in the previous era, if both fit, they both play, definitely. Michael Owen, as we'll come on to at some point, is when he got injured in the Sweden game in the World Cup after he'd kind of raced himself back to fitness for the World Cup. I think Wayne Rooney was banned because of I think McClaren just took it as he was going to be banned for some of the upcoming games in qualifying, so just decided, let's just give Rooney the time to recover. Because I think when he came back for the World Cup, because he himself had been injured and was racing back to the tournament, I think we said last time he'd tore his groin or something. He didn't tell any of the England training staff. So it was like, right, just forget it. Just go, be banned, just calm down, get yourself back to fitness, and we'll
banned.
Get banned.
Yourself be banned for a moment. Enjoy it.
Can we just all stop being banned, please?
On the note, Nick, you've mentioned that it's a summer's night at Old Trafford, but the highlights, it's absolutely pissing it down. He starts his era in rain.
He does.
His rain in rain.
Well, it's a bit of symmetry there, isn't it? It's always raining in those bookends for McClaren, isn't it? I hadn't thought about that before, but yeah, it is piercing it down in this game.
And
everyone's got that. They've got that red England top on that looks like it's constantly clinging to them anyway.
It does,
and
yeah.
It just looks even tighter on people.
One more on the rain. We're playing against reigning European champions Greece.
Absolutely.
A good test, really. And I think Greece did pretty much fall off a cliff completely after Euro 2004. But I can imagine at the time people going, well, if we beat these, that's a good start, isn't it? They're the reigning European champions.
If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. Even though I don't think Greece had qualified for the 2006 World Cup off the back of that.
Yeah, no, that's true. We've got team news in for the Greece game. Nick, do you want to give us the lineup?
Yeah. It is Paul Robinson in goal and Gary Neville, Rio Ferdinand, John Terry captain, and Ashley Cole. You got Stephen Gerrard playing on the right, Owen Hargreaves, Frank Lampard, Stuart Downing on the left. And Peter Crouch, Jermaine Defoe, England's substitute teachers up front.
Yeah. Okay. When I saw it, I liked that the midfield was Hargreaves and Lampard. Personally, I would have gone Hargreaves and Gerrard. That'll tell you how I sit on that side of the debate. But Stephen Gerrard on the right.
Yeah, that's
the new era. He's dropped David Beckham because we've got Stephen Gerrard. Now, when I was saying earlier, I wanted Beckham kind of to step back from England or what have you. It was because Sean Wright-Phillips, probably more likely Aaron Lennon, would have been the obvious call-up.
Yeah, I think Lennon and Wright Phillips are in the squad. I think Aaron Lennon was seen as the player who was going to take over from David Beckham because I think he definitely played a few games over in Germany for the World Cup, and it was saying, okay, well, Aaron Lennon, totally different player, really quick, high tempo, going to run at players, and yeah, that was seen as kind of like the difference of David Beckham, the slow player with the great output, compared to this absolute lightning kid who's going to play and just change the entire team, really. Yeah, I thought it's a good idea at least, isn't it, to kind of think that because Gerrard was a brilliant crosser of the ball as well, and I guess he's just gone. I'll just stick the best cross of the ball I have on the right hand side. That worked before.
You know, it's just annoys me. He's got Gary Neville at right back as well, so he's kept Beckham's like ally for all those years down the right
He's
hand
kept his
side,
footballing wife.
and he's played the big man who can theoretically get his head onto the end of crosses, Peter Crouch up front. But yeah, Gerrard's a good crosser of the ball, like you say. But we want to talk quickly about the program cover for the day for the game. I think it's
Oh.
one that you'll no doubt be sharing on socials because there's something inherently funny about it. I'll just give the headline and the subhead. Exclusive. This is the England magazine exclusive interview. They say McClaren's way is the headline. Is that might be a pun on something?
Yeah, not sure.
And the quote is, "It's going to be totally different."
You're right there, Steve.
And it was going all right. It doesn't have to be totally different.
We didn't want it that different. Come on.
No. Just
You've made it
different.
too different now.
Yeah, just different as in win 3 more games in major tournaments. That's all you need. Just a little bit extra. But do you want to talk about his face?
Yeah, the picture is amazing of him on the front. It's just this real, right, guys, cut the shit. Forget all the nonsense from before. Now there's a real manager in charge, and we mean business. It is so stoic. Like whoever has done the magazine, like the photo with him, it's like, yeah, Steve, that's it, Steve. Just look blank, no expression, deep into the camera, no thoughts whatsoever. He looks brilliant. He looks like the managing director of a soon-to-be like liquidated construction firm.
Yeah,
Just
definitely.
like the speaker. Oh, and also we've got Steve McClaren here speaking, MD of big construction, and then 6 months later resigns in disgrace as they've been like just
Golden
plowing the
handshake.
walls full of like sugar or something.
Yeah, he so does. He so does. Yeah. Oh man, McLaren's way. They've also got interviews with Owen Hargreaves, Dean Ashton, and Otto Rehhagel.
Otto Rehhagel was the Greece coach, so he'd stayed on despite them, I think, again not finish qualifying for the World Cup. And in his quote, he says, "We still have 90% of the lads who won Euro 2004." That's a scary thing. They're all like mega, like not big players, famously at that point anyway. But I also refuse to believe that he has used the words "lads" in his interview.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That is a translator just going, "Just say lads." He didn't know what to say there.
On the last point on the plus, the little tidbits on the England program on the England program is your Euro 2008 guide is included.
Oh,
Yeah, you won't be needing it.
sponsored by Nationwide.
But we've got a game. McLaren means business, and it would take just 14 minutes of that game for him to get off in absolutely scintillating fashion because his new captain, John Terry, heads in an opening goal. And the football is tragic. I watched it earlier. The ball is bouncing around so hard and high and everywhere. Like
It's going to be totally different. Okay.
we're not going to play football on the ground. That's the
I was-
past.
I was just thinking, as we go along here, maybe we should do a little item of just good stuff or bad stuff.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, is this good stuff that Steve's doing here? Is he doing, you know what? The front cover of the magazine, good stuff in my eyes.
Oh, yeah. And 14 minutes in, John Terry getting a goal. That's good stuff. Captain.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, Greece would continue to defend quite poorly, and England scored 4 unanswered goals in the first half. Definitely good stuff there. Lampard and Crouch got in on the act as well. I'm not sure who scored the other goal. We found some funny commentary. It
Oh,
was an American news show or something had done highlight. It was like New England manager Steve McClaren got his era
yeah.
off to a great start.
And it's like commentating and kind of laughing over like the highlights as they go along as well. They come up a bit later as well, but for this one, they say it calls Peter Crouch, who scored two of the goals. Actually, he goes the tall one, and then says he gets another RoboCop. Like there's no context to why he's called RoboCop. He just shouts out RoboCop.
Yeah, he was never RoboCop. He was just a robot, like
It
for
was the
dance.
robot. He
The
did the
robot.
robot, not RoboCop. Just comes in and just starts. In the RoboCop music starts. He's just aiming his gun at everyone, just blasting them away.
um, we'll have a quick look at the qualifying group then. So Greece weren't in that, as we say, it was a friendly. So the group consisted of England, Israel, Macedonia, Estonia, Andorra, Russia, and Croatia. That is a lot of cold nights there.
Yeah, that
Isn't
is.
it?
If you were following England, you kind. That's almost like a dream. Some of those, isn't it? You get to go to Macedonia, Estonia, Andorra, not Russia. Croatia would have been nice. Israel, I'll leave that one actually. I'll save my Euro
Just
away
sit out.
credits for that. Yeah,
Sit
not for
out
me,
for that.
lads. Not for me.
Relatively kind of straightforward on paper, do we think?
On paper, I think, yeah. I don't think that because with this round as well, it's two teams go through automatically. There's no playoffs, so it's just straight shootout between the best teams. I just think with this, I know with hindsight looking back, it is a tough group. I just think people had no idea how good Croatia were going to be,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I think they played at the World Cup previous to this, and I think they were
They
definitely
played
involved in
Brazil
that.
and
They
gave
played
Brazil a
Brazil.
game. Yeah, like as
They
in,
did,
oh,
yeah.
that's good.
And I think they were in that game where that English referee gave 3 yellow cards to one player, and and he finally got sent off. And it was like, what is this clown doing?
Yeah, not great, but we've got the group, we've got the way forward. How does it start?
Yep, qualification started against Andorra at home with England hammering their favourite minnows 5-0 at Old Trafford.
That's home.
Yeah, at home, which is all great stuff, and it just felt in the early days of McLaren here, these couple of games, felt there was a bit of freedom about England again, a bit of joy that they hadn't seen during the final days of Sven. Really, I know it's
9
4-0
goals
4-0
without
against a crap Greece and 5-0 against bad Andorra, which is the only type of Andorra there is. But yeah, it just felt like when the goals are going in, it's just like, you know what, this is a bit better, this, isn't it? This is a bit of freedom. It's not weighed down by your Beckham. Rooney's still not playing for England at this point either. Owen's not around. It just felt a bit fresh, and
and I do
maybe
think it's
some
worth
of the players that
mentioning.
other people wanted to see, maybe.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning just how bad some of those qualifying campaigns were under Sven at times. Like we spoke about it a few times. How under Southgate, like England are really just good at qualifying, and it's always done with a pretty much a degree of style. But you are talking taking things down to the wire, even under Sven, and like you say, losing to Northern Ireland and things like that along the way. So
I
5-0
think,
start is good. I don't think we were
yeah.
beating teams 5-0 that much under Sven towards the end.
No, it seemed like a lot of 2 and 3-0s, just resting players a lot. And it was just the qualification just kind of drew over you. I remember the Euro 2004 qualification being quite interesting. I don't know why, but I always love thinking about those Turkey games because
Yeah.
there was such hatred almost amongst the players, which is something you don't really see, especially from players that haven't really got anything to do with one another and haven't got any history whatsoever. There was just a bit of fire around them. But for the 2006 World Cup, I can't even remember. I think that Poland was like the hardest team England had to play, and it was just like, who cares?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we got off to a good start against Minnows, but that is what you want. And also, Crouchy and Defoe are banging them in, aren't they? Little partnership there.
Yeah. Be a shame if that was broken up at any point, wouldn't it?
It'd be a shame if
for
somebody were
no
to.
reason whatsoever.
Yeah. That's good stuff then. Really.
Good stuff. Well
Yeah.
done, Steve.
Macedonia are up next. They proved to be slightly tougher opposition than Andorra. But England do manage to get 3 points over the line. They win 1-0 thanks to a goal from Pete the Freak.
RoboCop.
The thing is, he's very much, obviously, in a much bigger space in the podcast world than us. But I feel like if we were to ever collaborate or have that potential to collaborate, we have called him Pete the Freak quite a lot.
We have. He's allegedly such a nice person. He probably got, yeah, I'm a bit of a freak, aren't I? Like one of those kind of, like, again, famously he said, if I hadn't been a footballer, what would you be? I'd be a virgin and all that. It's like, he's not an awful looking bloke, Peter Crouch, is he? I think in this era, he was seen as just like, oh, what a monster.
Yeah.
And he was just like, he's a normal looking guy who's just really tall. And, you know,
he's got a beard now, hasn't he? Which is just covers up for everything.
Yeah, that is the absolute. I mean, I've got one. I do the exact same thing. It just creates the illusion of a jawline. So that works for me. Even though he's still mega slim, there's something about. I've never listened to his podcast. Obviously, why would I need to? We've got enough going on ourselves. But there was something I just didn't like about his. Do you remember he did a Peter Crouch Saves the Summer or something like that? He did a show. When
like
I think it was when the
Fest sort of thing.
Yeah, it was when the pandemic was on and we were coming out of it, and there was the Euros and this big feeling of, yeah, this is good. And we were like, right, what have we got to look forward to on TV? Just Peter Crouch just running around screaming, just like the program just being very unfunny from whenever I watched it as well.
Those two lads who do the podcast with him are very much just like kind of annoying. He's like, oh, Pete, mate, wouldn't it be... Right, everyone, listeners, we've got to get this done right. There's going to be a Crouch Festival. You've got to make this happen, mate.
What does that even mean? What's a Crouch Festival?
Well, they're just making up as they go along. I was going to say, though, if we did collaborate, Pete the Freak would no doubt be on an IPA can in a couple of months' time. you lads are wicked. Let's do a beer. Mate, we've got to do a beer about it. This is going to be so fucking funny.
This is pure fun. This is what they call bants.
Back to it then. Just a note on Crouchy, though. In his prime, in his pomp, he's netted 11 goals in 10 England appearances at this point. So giving McClaren a lot of food for thought, despite, impending ruin. Yeah,
that ruin on the horizon, isn't it? Returning ruin is here. But yeah, Crouchy got this. This was his first period playing for England of, actually, Peter Crouch is really good. Have you seen his record? I mean, he's scoring hat-tricks against Jamaica and things like that. Yeah. But it was just seen as like, the minnow destroyer. You kind of need someone to do that. And as we go along through qualification, I think McClaren really does struggle with who you play up front a lot of the time. He chops and changes quite a lot because he hasn't got consistent Rooney there. Michael Owen's just nowhere to be seen, basically. And I don't think he knows quite what to do. But at this point, it's going well. And McClaren have pretty much stuck with the same team throughout all the games we talked about. Downing and Gerrard on the wings, Crouch and Defoe up front, Frank Lampard playing with a holding midfielder. And at this point, it had been Owen Hargreaves, who'd gone through a renaissance and a whole turnaround in terms of what the public thought of him at this point as well.
Yeah.
I think we may have mentioned it previously when he's in the proper, God, what are you playing for him for? He doesn't even play in England. He's shit.
And then it was I think it was 2004 and 2006. He put in man of the match performances on the games where we got knocked out, and he was just rabid, tenaciously winning the ball back and shit.
2006, definitely. I think even the one thing we didn't mention in that McClaren, the McClaren magazine, imagine that subscription to McClaren monthly. I think it was Owen
about cars.
Yeah, yeah. When are you going to tell me about the drain pipes? But I think you said that Owen Hargreaves said the Sweden game changed everything for me or something like that. So I assume he played in the Sweden game in the World Cup. I think it was when England, they were both through already and they just played kind of like comedy teams, basically. But that got him in the side for a lot of the tournament. And this was seen as actually Owen Hargreaves was great. And I think around this period, Owen Hargreaves is the England player of the year.
Yeah.
Because so others have really shone. I mean, I feel bad for Defoe and Crouch for not winning that.
True, but Hargreaves was pretty spot on, and it was a type of player that we'd really, really, really missed.
Yeah,
going back to the start of the Sven era as well, it was never there, and
you
could probably say even before that as well.
And that kind of player, I think Michael Carrick plays in the World Cup. I think he starts one of the games too, and that's where you kind of think, well, actually, McClaren has done the sensible thing here, good stuff, of playing a holding midfielder and Lampard, because you free them up, Gerrard on the right. Well, yeah, he's done it. He's done what we've all been crying out for ages, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. But wouldn't be long until the honeymoon period is over because England are about to hit a little stumbling block against Macedonia.
Yes, Macedonia at home. England's next game was the return fixture from the away game, and one of us was at this game, and one of us also bought a half and half scarf that day.
Do you still own it?
Um,
Stopped you in there. I don't know if
it's
you wanted to keep it a
still.
secret which one of it was this.
I mean, it's fine. I mean, I'm not going to go to my grave going, I wish George hadn't told about the half and half scarf. I'll never live it down.
Shocking
Um,
game to go to as well, and a shocking purchase to keep and just.
Yeah, I mean, I say keep. I don't know where it is. It's probably at my mom's house somewhere. But like, I think it was like the first England game I'd ever gone to. Don't know why I bought it. I was young and thought, why not? And it's a dreadful game, as you've said as well, ending 0-0. And my memory tells me England just couldn't break down Macedonia. But actually, watching the highlights back, Macedonia had a fair amount of chances. And for any sycophants out there, or any kind of perverts, the entire game is on YouTube if you want to watch it.
That's fucked.
The
Before we
games
found
that
our
we
gold
just
mine, we would have
the,
had to
the
have covered
games that
that.
we can't find access to whatsoever. But Macedonia, pretty much every England game around the McClaren era is just on YouTube. Like no one cares
Yeah.
about the copyrights or taking any of those down. It's just leave them up. We don't. Who's going to watch this? Yeah, well, we're going to really lose money out of this, aren't we?
Was that a rainy night? Can you remember?
I don't think so. I think it was dry from memory. I don't remember having to take like a raincoat or anything. But yeah, not the best game. I think Gary Neville misses like an open goal, and it's Rooney's first game back as well, and he doesn't have a good time. As pretty much nobody does either. And even West Brom and Macedonia's Artem Shaqiri said playing Andorra was tougher than playing England, and Macedonia should have won that game and the first game as well between the two.
Yeah. Just looking at some articles from around the time, apparently Steve McClaren had said he can turn angry if he needs to. Just around the time of this game, and obviously the journalists are going, well, this must have made him angry.
Well, a stupid time to say that, Steve, when you didn't know what the result was going to be.
Yeah, first bump in the road then, surely. It is quite an early bump, though.
Yeah.
We're talking about 4 games.
Yeah, this would have been the fourth game. I like to say early bump in the road. And from reading around the articles around this time, it seems that the press are already out for the manager and the players. It's already seen as well. McLaren's got to book his ideas up here. We can't even beat Macedonia at home, which is bad and crap and bad stuff. Let's
Yeah.
let's start filling that column up as well. It's not great at all, but it's kind of like, all right, calm down. It's not great, but it's let's just move on from there.
Yeah, and England do have to move on because 4 days later they travel to Zagreb to play Croatia, who had never lost a competitive game of qualifying there, or perhaps at all. I'm not sure.
Maybe ever, I think, yeah, because I think they'd only become a team in, I think we said 94 when we covered Croatia previously, so they'd not really been around that long, 12 years.
Yeah, but I think we start to see here that McLaren, like Graham Taylor, is very much aware of negative press of himself. I think Taylor would sort of double down, though. He would keep doing the same thing, and McLaren switches things up and plays 5 at the back. Why? What the hell's he thinking? Is it to fit players in? I mean, what have we got here?
Yeah, it's 5 at the back. England hadn't played this since 8 years previous under Glenn Hoddle. And this was still the period of like 5 at the back. Are you mad? We don't play that in England. Don't be so stupid. We'd only just about got used to like playing 3 up front at this point. Kind of like the wing, like a wingers and 1 striker. That was just starting to come into fashion around this point.
But we've always been happy to play left-footed players on, like, well, right-footed centre mids and left wing and flipping,
Gerrard's been on the right for the first few games here.
Exactly. So he's gone 5 at the back. Do you want to give us the team, or shall I?
You do it. You like reading the English players out, don't you? So
Yeah. In goal, Paul Robinson. The back 5 consists of Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, Rio Ferdinand, John Terry, and Ashley Cole. A midfield three of Michael Carrick, Frank Lampard, and Scott Parker, with Wayne Rooney and Peter Crouch up front. There's a lot to mull over there, I think. Jamie Carragher. Has he played that back five just to get Carragher in? Because I imagine Carragher was probably, we've got to find a way to get him in around this time. Because,
he
he
would
was
have
pretty shit
been.
hot for Liverpool in this era.
Yeah, he would have been kind of really at his peak at this point around 2000 and I think 2005 is when they won the European Cup. And I think they're still winning stuff under Benitez when he's playing as a centre back as well. And maybe it is to get Carragher in there. In the build-up, it had been talked about Sean Wright-Phillips or Phil Neville would play right wing back with Gary Neville playing one of the three centre backs.
You should know which one of those two that you're going to play.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you'd ideally, but then neither of them play in the that. I don't. And this happens quite a bit where in the press they speculate about who's going to play, and it's kind of a straight shootout between one of the players, and it's a different player that comes in. So I don't know if maybe that was in McClaren's thinking or whatever. But and Gary Neville had played that right centre back quite a lot for England under Venables. He'd done it under Hoddle as well. So you think, okay, maybe that's the idea, but. Weirdly, this is kind of the perfect place you could have played David Beckham if you hadn't just kicked him out.
Yeah,
I think today you'd have David Beckham as almost like a Trent Alexander-Arnold in today's kind of speak and today's money. So you'd probably have him as a right wing back because brilliant delivery, can run about, lots of energy, but not mega quick. So you kind of think actually, if you were going to do that, that's where you play David Beckham, but. He's already said no Beckham. We don't want any of that around here. So he's picked Gary Neville at right wing back in a position he's not played in 8 years. Just no prep seemingly as well. And he's also picked Michael Carrick and Scott Parker in the midfield.
I was just thinking that. I think surely this back five and situation must have been enforced by a lack of Gerrard. Is he not? Is he on the bench?
No, Gerrard's banned for the Zagreb trip, and Owen Hargreaves has broken his leg.
Oh, I see. Oh, Jesus Christ.
So not good, as you'd think. But you think Michael Carrick, who played a bit for England in the World Cup, I think he's about to move or has just moved to Man United at this point. I think he's moved to Man United at this point and he's starting to start games and play a bit more. Scott Parker, who just moved to Newcastle from Chelsea as well. So they're playing regular football. It's just whether you think, was that the best thing you could have done? I mean, Stuart Downing's out of the team. I don't think he'd particularly impressed so far. Since playing, but at least it brings that side to you because you've not got your right winger, you've not got your left winger. I don't know what Joe Cole was up to at this point, but not around, not needed.
Somewhere between the ages of 24 and 34.
Between 24 and 25 forever.
yeah, that's it actually. Yeah, it's a strange one. Then it is a strange one, and it's a really big game, and he's experimenting. So. Scott Parker and Michael Carrick we've kind of already discussed, I think. And I think McClaren did describe all of this sort of tactical upheaval as a way to help England get forward. I don't know how.
I think maybe the idea of Ashley Cole and Gary Neville pushing into midfield, trying to flood the midfield because then you'd have five across the midfield, and maybe that could help and give Frank Lampard the license to go forward a bit more, which he'd done in the opening game under McClaren as well. But then it just all doesn't quite work, does it? Like that doesn't look like you don't play that for the first time at this point, I don't think. And maybe like you say, he's reacting to. Well, that was crap against Macedonia. It was like, well, I'll show them. I'm going to do a big tactic now on them, and we'll see who's laughing at the end of this. And
God,
there's a few people laughing at the end of it, and it's not McClaren.
This is the game where he calls for an English performance beforehand.
Yes, very well could be. Yeah,
yeah. And the game kind of started with Croatia in the ascendancy. Really, England not really managing to do too much at all to keep them at bay. Obviously, as we said, Croatia have been so good for so long, sort of on home turf. And they would go 1-0 up through Eduardo, whose looping header came just before the hour. So that's 1-0 to Croatia. England can still find a way back in, but just 8 minutes after conceding the first goal, this happens.
Oh my goodness! Oh! Have you ever seen anything like that? England are 2-0 down. And Paul Robinson, the goalkeeper, for whom everything went right in the first half, has missed his kick. It would be a catastrophe really at any time, but at this moment, it might just finish off England here in Zagreb.
And it's one of the worst. We've seen a lot of them.
We
There's
say
more
that
to
a lot,
come.
don't we?
There's more to come. This is a truly, truly, truly bad England moment, and the type that shapes a manager's career in the job.
Yeah. For people who don't know, the ball is, Gary Neville receives the ball, towards the edge of his own area. He played the ball back to Paul Robinson, and the ball kind of bobbles over Robinson's foot as he goes to kick it up the pitch, and it just goes over his foot straight into the net, and it's terrible. Gary Neville would later, and it goes down as a Neville own goal, but it's remembered as like, but Gary Neville must have been fuming about that. I was like, what do you mean? I've not done anything wrong. But Gary Neville did since say, actually, I should have passed that away from goal, so it wasn't going towards the net itself. If you're going to play a back pass like that, you don't do it towards the actual goal itself, to the side instead, which is being quite generous to Paul Robinson because, and you kind of can't really, you can blame Robinson clearly. It's an awful error, but a bobble like that, like when you see it, it is proper freaky. It's like, I don't know, like a prank show or something.
Yeah, like the ball's on a string and someone just, like when they put like a fiver on the floor.
Yeah.
Attached to like an invisible string.
Yeah, and it's like, there's like noise like, wank! And just like, as someone's like doing it on, there's a whole like studio audience laughing their arse off in the background.
Bloody Paul Robinson, man. England are in the depths of it here with goalkeepers as well.
I think it's also made worse, this mistake, and I always remember this, is the fact that there's an advert for Borat in the background. Like, this makes it way worse because at the time, like, the advert is going across the screen as Robinson goes to clear it, and it looks like it's a prank again. I think it's more of that. And then there's like a still, and it's just got Borat's face behind Paul Robinson as Rio Ferdinand is just staring at him.
Did you notice what it said on the Borat adverts circling around, like basically as the moment happens?
I think I missed it. What does it say?
Well, it says Borat, then it's got his face, and then it says, "I like the English wags."
Oh God, really?
This is away in Croatia. Makes me think the Croatians have set us up there.
Well, you get when I think it happens a lot in English cricket when they'll play abroad somewhere, and basically because the place where they're playing, like if it's in the Caribbean or maybe South Africa, like English companies know that England are playing, so this is a great chance for them to do some good sponsorship. So there's like really weird English sponsors in the West Indies or something like that. Yeah. And it's just like, this is so-and-so beer or tiles or just like checker trade or something like that. And it's like, what's this doing here? And that's a bit like, just kind of like, right, get this in, this big audience, get Borat on there, in all in English as well. It's not even in like Croatian, the language.
Oh man, absolutely rubbish. McClaren kind of not let the game slip because it had already gone, but he just kind of sat there and took it, really. The changes didn't come, the shape stayed the same, and England weren't making chances themselves.
Yeah, and he waited until the 74th minute until he changed something as well. So just happy with what was going on, 0-0, playing crap football in a bad formation. And that was it, really. And I think it's, the papers did report it as it being like a real humiliation for England. And again, they're just kind of unaware of how good Croatia are. I watched a little bit of the game and all the names are there, and we'll come to Croatia later on in the qualifying campaign too. But already, like I say, the knives are out after Macedonia, and they're almost kind of like, what a stupid decision. What a bad stuff this is to make Steve McClaren the England manager already.
I know. And you seem to be very much just sort of like, this is all a bit harsh. Am I right in saying that? Is that what you think? It's a bit harsh?
I kind of think, we've covered a lot of England qualifying campaigns, and we know when it's bad. And I'm not saying this isn't in the good stuff category. That's fine. But, losing your toughest away game can happen. And a bad draw at home, it doesn't feel like the ultimate disaster. It always felt like England was still going to qualify. Croatia were going to drop points. England will go through top, even though they don't need to go through top. they'll get their stuff together because they're England, and they'll get the players kind of firing again. And this is only 2 bad games. Remember when we were saying, I know they beat the minnows before them and they've won away in Macedonia, but you felt it was just coming. You just felt like, okay, this is just a bit of a bad run for England. Let's move on.
This was England's first competitive game that they would lose by more than 1 goal for 11 years. So 11 years previous to that. I did try and find what that game was, but I couldn't find it just. 95 it would have been, wouldn't it?
5 competitive game. It's going to be like a really bad one, isn't it? It's going to be, do you reckon it's Australia at home?
Would that be competitive though?
No, that's a good point, actually. No, it wouldn't have been. We'll have to have a think. There's no way of knowing.
There's no way of knowing at all.
No.
What it could potentially be from this page I'm looking at, we did lose 3-1 to Brazil in the Umbro Cup in 95. Whether that counts as competitive or not, I'm not sure.
It's got to be, yeah.
This was also
be a bit further.
Frank Lampard's 50th England cap. I want to leave the Croatia result there, but with a bit of a line from the Guardian's match report. This is the final line in the match report. McClaren's next qualifier is in Israel in March, meaning he must suffer 5 months of reflections as well as fears deep down and never to be admitted that this job will overwhelm him as it has so many others. Who does that remind you of?
Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, what was he saying? He was like, you guys can carry on, but I'm going to have to think about this sort of like all summer. It's really
Didn't he say that you've ruined my summer, he said, or something like that?
Yeah. That would be until we got back into the qualifiers, but England do have a couple of friendlies to try and dial this thing in and get it back on track. That starts with a friendly in the Netherlands, right? Not in England. We're away to the Dutch.
Yes, it's the Dutch, and doing as the Dutch do, we get experimental, and Steve goes that way. He gives a debut to Micah Richards. And you get him in there.
How many people have given a debut? I swear to God, Micah Richards gets a debut every other week.
It's that, or they bring him out of the cold. It's one of the two. It's one of the two. Is it? I think it's because we've had like a lot of players that end up like going over the Capello era as well.
Yeah.
So I think we recently done like 2 episodes on Capello, just about getting England to Euro 2012. Actually, in Steve McClaren's first squad, Michael Dawson's in there, and he actually doesn't get a first game for England until until the start of that second period of Capello. That's so far away for him to be like, getting in the England team, boys. Get it down there, and then he has to wait so long. But someone who doesn't have to wait any longer is Andy Johnson of Everton.
Andy Johnson, the latest member of Steve McClaren's Lonely Hearts Club Band. We're talking experimentation. Saying it almost scoffingly there, Nick, but he was doing good, wasn't he? Probably worthy of an England call-up.
Yeah, he'd had a really strange career, Andy Johnson. So he'd kind of risen to, general knowledge through his hot streak during Crystal Palace's rise into the Championship playoffs in 2005. Johnson kind of made a big impact on promotion as well in the Premier League, and was the English top goal scorer in the division in his first season, when he scored 21 goals. 10 of them were through penalties. They all count. So that's absolutely fine.
And that's good for England. We need a good penalty taker.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially since we've gone out of the last 2 on penalties. I bet that would have been one of the things of, look at all the penalties he scored, though. That's good.
Yeah, definitely.
Can't wait to break that record. But I seem to remember Johnson as well. I remember he once won a penalty for Crystal Palace, because it was usually him winning them as well. I remember he did it once. He fell over, and the white of the penalty area, like the line, like rubbed on his head, because if you don't know him, he's a bald man. And there was like a white line just on his head as he took the penalty as well. And it was just like, this is really weird, this.
To me, Andy Johnson is a PES player. He's a buy them for your career team or your Master League team, because they're doing well in the Prem at that moment and you're too young to know about other countries' football type of player. Get him up front for Man United. He was
little and quick. That's what I remember him being, little and quick. He'd have a good shot into the far post, and he was a decent player. Palace would get relegated in his season in the league, but Johnson would move to Everton. This isn't actually his proper debut Sven had kind of had a little, cursory glance over to him during his tenure, but didn't take him to the World Cup. But this is where McClaren kind of goes all in on Johnson, and he starts playing him for a good run of games. But my big memory of Andy Johnson is that he just has the exact same face as David Beckham.
I know it's absolutely madness. Like I
It's
suggest
insane.
a Google or a side by side. It looks just like him, but like obviously bald and without any.
But we've seen David
Beck's
Beckham
appeal.
bald, so it's kind of like there's still like a bit of like an uncanny valley. It's like an AI of David Beckham almost. But I always remember of because you've mentioned pro, like whenever I had pro, and you could obviously edit all the players and all the kits and everything like that, which I absolutely loved. I always remember changing Andy Johnson's face to David Beckham's face, because Beckham's was like an inset scanned face into the game, and just going, right, that's fixed now. That's done. Like when you're just putting all your teams together, like the first thing you do, right, get Andy Johnson's face, stick it on there.
Yeah, I used to love doing all that stuff, and if a player was wearing long or short sleeved shirts, you'd make sure that they had it right.
As a proper pro pervert, I always remember there was a thing at Arsenal for a long time about whoever was club captain would choose on a match day whether the whole team would wear short sleeves or long sleeves.
Yeah.
Now this may be rubbish and I've forgotten it or something like that, but if you look back at that Arsenal team around the Invincibles era, they've all either got long or short sleeves on, like as a team. And I always remember going into pro and changing it so every single Arsenal player had seasonal, so they would all have to have the same ones. I didn't have any siblings, as you can tell, or I didn't have any activities to do when I was young. It was just pro.
Yeah. Johnson didn't really set the world alight in this game against the Netherlands. But Wayne Rooney gets a goal. It's his first England goal in a year. I swear we just did this. We did this last week. It'll be a long time in the podcast feed since we did it. But when we were doing the Capello second era post 2010, he scored his first goal in over a year for England there as well, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Or something like that. No, he scored like 2 in 2 years or something.
Yeah, he goes through these big barren periods for England, doesn't he? And this is actually only his third England goal since Euro 2004. So this is his third goal since that second against Croatia. Mental.
He's aged so much.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, for McClaren and for England, they couldn't hold out to get the non-free points, the friendly kudos. Van der Vaart equalised late on. There was more American commentary if people are interested in digging out those highlights. They're kind of going in on Rooney, aren't they, on there?
Yeah, they're kind of openly laughing at the idea that Rooney's not scored for England in over a year. Like, because he's kind of seen as one of the big players, and it's like, he's not scored for England in over a year. And like, you can actually hear people in the background just like openly laughing at the idea that's happened. And it's like the way they comment on the England team is with such disdain in this period. It's genuinely like they're talking about wrestling. And it's like, oh, can you believe this? This is a sport people watch.
England are getting in the good teams for the friendlies, though. They welcome Spain to Old Trafford next. This is the root of the Spain side, really, that would go on to just be one of, if not the best international teams of all time and win everything. You got the likes of Casillas, Ramos, Puyol, Xavi, David Villa, David Silva, all kind of starting, and you've got Torres, Fabregas on the bench, Iniesta even on the bench, and England have players as well that they want to bring.
We've got humans.
This is a good way of summing up where England are.
The
notes on englandstats.com for this game. There's only 3 notes and they're all player milestones. Ben Foster's first cap, Gary Neville's last cap, Joey Barton's only cap. So we're chucking a lot of shit at the wall. We're going old, young, and like completely rogue.
Yeah, it's like we're just picking it for some like a weird wedding. Who's something blue? Is that Kieran Dyer? Because he's around this period as well. I don't even know why he's considered. This feels way too late to be playing Kieran Dyer for England.
Yeah, it very doesn't play. Oh no, he does. Oh my god, I thought you were saying he was in consideration.
No, he fully plays in the game. And there's another few games as we come up as well. Kieran Dyer's like properly back in selection as well from McClaren, and McClaren's just like I say, it does feel already he's kind of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what works, and not a lot of it is. Like he's like playing with like old broken toys or something.
Yeah, yeah. And the game itself went, unfortunately for England, the way of the Spanish. Andres Iniesta would come off the bench to score the only goal of the game on 63 minutes. It's another experiment, and they do say, that's what these friendlies are for, right? For experimenting. How do you think he's going to look back on this period of experimentation? A 1-1 draw with the Dutch and a 1-0 loss against Spain.
It's going in the bad stuff column, I'm afraid. Really, when you're playing these kind of players, and it's only with hindsight that we keep having to think. Joey Barton was playing well at the time. I'm sure Kieran Dyer was doing something good to get back in the England team, and it wasn't just let's see, he used to be good. I remember him, like nostalgia already.
Yeah, we can be
Kieran
guilty
Dyer.
of that sometimes, I think. We don't know the full context of the Prem season around. He must have been having a good time. Or maybe he wasn't.
I think he was at Man City around this point, and he was seen as a bit of a young player of, Eden never got a cap under Sven, which is bollocks because Sven just dished them out that they were fucking chewing gum.
Yeah.
Just desperate to get rid of them, basically. But I don't think it's working. And he goes to experiment in these games, which is exactly what they're for. They do end up on his permanent record, but they're not competitive games. But, it's not unusual for a national side especially, to go 4 games without a win. But when the manager's only got wins over Greece, Andorra, and Macedonia, it's not really a lot to kind of fall back on.
He's not got that credit in the bank yet, has he? And the press are already out for him. One thing that's worth noting, Kieran Dyer we've discussed Gerrard on the right, discussed Aaron Lennon, Wright Phillips, Gary Neville on the right.
Version of the right, yeah.
Yeah, a version of the right, but the right's all the same.
Yeah.
There's nobody who's stepped up to take David Beckham's place in the squad and in the starting lineup even, and you think, well, surely he should have just as good a chance as all of them. Why is McClaren not picking him?
Yeah, I think he's just kind of, he's made his choice here, and he's already seen, as if I go back on it, which is probably true. If I go back on it already, that's weakness. Straight away he's now he'd be kind of going and kissing the hardest man in prison, wouldn't he? So probably not the best idea. I don't know. Who knows? But after he's punched him, I don't think it's a great idea. But England hadn't found the replacement, and they'd not, they hadn't lived in a world sans Beckham since 1996, and literally some fans had only ever known Beckham on the right, like that. Just that side, I'd only ever known that as an England fan. Really, it was just assumed David Beckham would play there, and as we've gone through those as well, you say Wright Phillips and Lennon and all that. McClaren had favoured Gerrard on the right, seemingly as that way to solve the Gerrard and Lampard problem. You've got a holding midfielder in there. Just putting your best crosser of the ball on the right takes a lot away from Gerrard's game and the damage he can do driving from midfield as well, which is kind of ironic, seeing as England seemingly discovered a left-footed winger in Stuart Downing and got rid of him immediately.
Yeah. So we're finally looking like we solved that left problem. They've got a right problem, even though we've got about 4 or 5 flipping players who can play there.
It's like a small beach towel, isn't it? It can't cover both sides, the right and the left, can it?
And I tell you what's worse than all of this is the fact that the big dogs aren't doing it. Don't forget, we're focusing really on, it's mad that he's playing Joey Barton and all these other players, but Lampard and Gerrard and all those sorts of players are always there, but England can't rely on them to just transform a game and get us the wins that we need.
Yeah, I totally agree. Lampard came in for a lot of scrutiny around this period as well, which we'll come on to as well. But Gerrard kind of banned for that game, not performing in some of them as well. I think it's maybe harsh to say that, but there's a lot of stuff just happening, isn't there? And I don't think it's a lot of good stuff either. Yes, it isn't helped by those guys being out. Rooney only ending his goal drought just about. Lampard hadn't scored since the opening game. Gerrard, 1 goal in 8. Crouch and Defoe didn't know if one of them was going to play each week either. And like I say, Stuart Downing's not in the team. I know he's not one of the big players, but he was seen as a bit of a hope, and he'd been playing well at Middlesbrough for McClaren too.
So he's had his time to sort of experiment. He's had his crazy teenage days, Steve McClaren. He's had a little bit of time to think about how the job is going to crush him, in the words of The Guardian. And up next is that qualifier against Israel.
Yeah, it's off to Israel, back on the bandwagon of qualification. Here we go. And yeah, Israel, away to Israel, a team who'd drawn in Russia and only lost 4-3 at home to Croatia in the previous round of games. So seen as an easy tie when it probably came out, no longer really.
Tal Ben Haim in their team and Yossi Benayoun.
Yeah, the two players that I have any memory of from that Israel team. Do you know any others?
I mean, I've got the list in front of me, but I don't know any.
Oh, do you want to
of
read it out, do
you? No. Amit Ben Shushan. He says like we might know him, but no.
He sounds like we may know him.
Yeah, so this is England. I'm loving all of this, using this England stats site today. This is England's 850th match.
What a way to celebrate it.
Andy Johnson keeps his place up front.
Yeah, he keeps his place up front. McClaren's keen on him. With one of the journalists saying he played bonehead football during this game, Andy Johnson apparently. I mean, I don't really know what. I don't really. Yeah, it's just offensive. Don't really know what that means. And bonehead is definitely just because he's bald.
Yeah, like the Oasis guitarist.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't go well for Andy Johnson. He's replaced 10 minutes from time by Jermaine Defoe within this as well.
And the game's still 0-0 at that point. Jamie Carragher was at left back as well. That's worth a note.
Insane. I mean, what are you? I mean, Jamie Carragher, killing it at centre back during this period, even playing, on the right side of a back three or whatever it was going to be. But playing him at left back, I'm assuming Ashley Cole was injured. Wayne Bridge, who knows? But there's got to have been someone else apart from Jamie Carragher to play there. Again, a right-footed player playing on the left side. We're doing it with defenders now.
And ahead of him, we've got that famous, just when there's just a connection on a side of the pitch, you think of sort of Neville and Beckham, as we've mentioned, and there's others, but this time it's Carragher and Lennon.
Oh, Aaron Lennon playing on the left-hand side with Jamie Carragher just jogging up behind him as well for the overlap.
One's not tracking back and one's not coming forward. Like, that's fine in theory, but it's just not gonna help things, is it? Because it's very one-dimensional.
We need both of those players to do that, but also do the other thing.
The game actually ended 0-0, and it was a Dyer affair, not a Kieran Dyer affair, but
no, he probably played at some point, didn't he? Yeah, and there's nothing to talk about as well in this game. There is like almost no incidents, like the Men in Black have just come in and erased your memory about it. So much so that at half time, Keys, Hoddle, and Jamie Redknapp are debating if an Israel player had shoulder barged Aaron Lennon on the halfway line. Just nothing to talk about. So they're just going, yeah, that was a crucial moment. And it's like, it's not even like there was a breakaway. It was just like it was an incident that happened, like breathing.
A bit of argy-bargy between Tal Ben Haim and Wayne Rooney. And yeah, England's the patience of the fans is wearing very thin. But next up, they're still, they're still away as well. And it's away to Andorra this time. There's a notable moment in this game, but right up until halftime, there wasn't much to sort of say in terms of being of note. It's 0-0 at halftime, and England fans had seen enough.
Yeah, I think this is on the backdrop of this was actually already seen as a must-win game for England so early in qualifying, and with this as well, England, no matter what, England was still likely to stay fourth in the qualifying group due to Israel beating Estonia earlier in the day.
Yeah,
when you go into that with like the backdrop of that and hating the manager and hating the players, and it's 0-0 in Andorra.
I know. And fourth place is just like, it's there for the taking, guys, but you got to do something, you got to stay fourth in this group. Tell you what, these England fans are a funny looking bunch, aren't they? It feels like the 90s still. I think that the fans have regressed to the 90s because they're like the clothes, or just like white shirts that you'd wear if you were a twat going uptown and things like that. And there was one point, there was a woman in the crowd, like just being absolutely, I don't know, like demolished from people just trying to push over to shout at Steve McClaren. was proper rough. And again, really rainy. I don't think it stops raining for this entire tenure.
No, I
Um,
don't. I don't think he does. No.
the game was actually held in Barcelona, near
Yeah.
13,000 people in attendance, and there were a lot of England fans. And yeah, they weren't happy. And McClaren tries to change things up a bit, moves Aaron Lennon to the right, and 8 minutes into the second half, Steven Gerrard settles the nerves with a strike. And McClaren was still thinking, fuck, I mean, where have you been? Where have you been? Do you know what I
Who
mean?
told you to play on the right?
Yeah, and it's like there's not, you can't really call it a celebration, can you? They want out. They don't want to be there.
Yeah, it's just relief, really, and you can see that it's affecting the players as well. I think when Gerrard scores and it breaks the deadlock, it's the England fans just go like, yeah, like they're almost angry that they finally scored. Like, took you long enough. Like they're
Yeah.
really not happy, and Gerrard literally just goes, gets the ball, and runs back like it's like a consolation goal. Like they're like loads of goals down already, and he gets like another 15 minutes from time, making it 2-goal cushion, and he makes like a gesture to the fans of like a 2, but it can also be seen as a V sign.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, yep, 2.
He knows what he's doing.
That's
Yeah.
me with 2, please, thank you. But
And
it's
that's
like,
all I'm saying. You can't cut me on it.
that's really terrible. But we also in this game get to witness one of the great England moments of all time. David Nugent's first and only goal for England in his first and only appearance for his country, scoring from half a yard out. Not even that, it's on the line when he kicks it.
Yeah, and there's no trouble either, is that? It's not like you do see them sometimes and it's thinking, well, you probably needed it just to be safe that so and so wasn't going to jump in, but he just going, fuck this, I'm having my moment, man.
Absolutely, yeah. It's what we'd do if that was happening to us. I mean, we're just like, shit, I could be in here. And I think because Jermaine Defoe has a shot, it kind of squirms under the keeper. No one's near the goal line apart from Nugent, who is pegging it to just kind of get there, like the shops are about to shut. And he is just breaking his neck to get there, smashes it in. Again, part of the goal is already over the line when he's doing it. So it's just like, that's mine.
How is he getting a look in? Like,
yeah,
what is happening with things where, like, you know, you've gone through the strikers that you've got, and Andy Johnson, who's an experiment anyway, you're like, we need backup for Johnson.
An experiment anyway, like he's just like Frankenstein's monster. Just like McClaren just sat there bubbling him up.
Doing flipping beef heart football or whatever it was.
Here we go. Essence of David Beckham's face.
Harius Expellimus.
Yeah, it's really weird, isn't it? And it's odd to think why Nugent is even in the squad around this time, especially in such a crucial game. That the fact that he's even on the bench when England must win in this kind of like hellscape. Around this time, I don't know, he'd scored 11 goals the previous season for Preston in the Championship, so one league below the Premier League, and would end the season with 15 goals in this campaign. So kind of what's he doing to get called up? Not to be harsh on David Nugent, but you wouldn't think that's like, wow, hot prospect coming up here. 15 goals in the Championship and 11 the previous before.
I think he's going for proper footballers. Do you know what I mean? Why don't we pick players from the Championship? He's banging them in the Championship and he's English. Get him in. And he's like, yeah, I will actually.
And he's also already playing from one of the things that we've seen from England managers of like, look what I'm dealing with here. I'm going to have to start picking players from the Championship. And he's about 7 games in.
Yeah, they can't give him money though to fix it.
Yeah, that's the standard thing for an England manager of like when they're on their last legs almost of like, well, if you're not careful, I'm going to have to go into that bin. I'm going to have to pick some players out of that bin if you're not careful. If you don't give me some great ones from like sprouting up from the earth, like where's the new Phil Foden?
Yeah. Oh dear. But we get the win. Fourth place is more secure than it was, even though I think it was pretty much guaranteed.
Fourth looms large.
Full speed ahead, Barcelona.
Yeah, well, we're already there.
After the win, McClaren would, I think we'll see the quote, we'll hear the quote, and then we'll talk about what we make of it. So he said, gentlemen, if you want to write whatever you want to write, you can write it, because that's all I'm going to say. Thank you. Boom.
Oh.
That rock and
knock them
roll, eh?
down. Yeah,
That David Nugent, eh?
it's such Alex Turner mic drop, isn't it? Like he doesn't know what he's saying there. It's like Graham Taylor has said it, but without any of the charm or the warmth around him, or even kind of like the anger that he used to address the media. It's kind of not even like Mike Bassett.
Yeah.
Like it's none of that at all. And it seemed like it was just like, what is going on here? It's the way he says, if you want to write whatever you want to write, he said that too many times.
I know who's writing. Am I writing? All the journalists
Yeah.
afterwards going, am I supposed to be writing or is he writing it?
Write what you want. And you can write what you want as well. That's fine. I'm not going to stop you, thought police, can't say anything these days. And you can write it because that is all I'm going to say. So he's not stopping them right. He's like, I'm not going to stop you writing whatever you want to write. You can do that still, but I'm not going to say anything. Thank you.
I'm not giving you anything to write.
Yeah, I'm giving you no content here. How are you going to get content out of that game there? And you can't say David Nugent either. That's the rule.
Oh dear, oh dear. I think we're going to sign off from this episode on a win, but we really need a change. Do you think one is in the air?
You feel it, don't you? It feels like things just can't keep going on the way that it has. But I mean, like we say, England are fourth in the qualifying group, playing bad football, playing bad players. Almost, not to be too harsh, but like even Andy Johnson's been, kicked out of the team basically.
Bonehead himself.
Bonehead himself, Beckham, yeah. And that's it. It's kind of like something's got to happen around this period, you think, and we'll pick up next time when we see what does happen, because there's a lot still to come.
There you go. Thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you next time for the McClaren Odyssey Part 3.